There was a time when creativity felt natural to me, to you, to all of us. Not productive, not strategic, not something I had to schedule or optimize. I just created. I wrote stories in notebooks. I rearranged my bedroom for no reason. Made playlists, cut pictures out of magazines. Daydreamed constantly. I didn't need perfect conditions to be creative because creativity was simply a part of daily life. And then adulthood happened. Responsibilities, work, constant notifications, endless scrolling, feeling mentally scattered all the time. Somewhere along the way, I started believing that creativity required large blocks of uninterrupted time. I never seem to have that anymore. But I realised something recently. I didn't lose my creativity. I lost quiet space. And I think a lot of midlife women are experiencing the same thing. We spend so much of our lives consuming now, looking at screens, absorbing information, responding to messages, watching content, listening to podcasts. While multitasking throughout the day, our minds are full all the time. So today I want to talk about how I've slowly started to reconnect with my creativity without relying on screens, complicated routines, or huge amounts of free time. Because I truly believe that creativity can return in very small, gentle ways. I want to say first, this is not an anti-technology video. I'm obviously online. I make videos for the internet. I use technology every day. But I do think that many of us are overstimulated in ways that we don't fully realise. There's very little silence anymore, very little boredom, very little space for our own thoughts to fully form before something else enters our attention. And creativity needs space, not perfection, not talent, not expensive supplies, space. I think this becomes especially difficult in midlife because so many of us are carrying that invisible mental load all of the time. You're thinking about the house, the shopping, your family, work, other people's needs, appointments, responsibilities, emails, messages. Even when we finally sit down to rest, we often reach straight for our phones because we're exhausted. And I understand that completely. But I noticed that when every quiet moment is filled with input, my imagination just slowly disappears into the background. I stop noticing ideas. I stop daydreaming. I stop feeling creatively connected to myself. And I don't think creativity thrives under constant stimulation. I think it thrives in softness, in pauses, in small pockets of presence. One thing that I hear and read a lot about online from midlife women is this: I just don't have time to be creative anymore. And honestly, I used to say the same thing. But when I really thought about it, I realised that it wasn't lacking creativity entirely. I was lacking access to it. Because creativity doesn't always arrive during these kind of huge, dramatic, artistic sessions. Sometimes it just appears while you're stirring soup or walking, when you're writing a shopping list by hand, even while you're just sitting quietly with a cup of tea. As children, we created in fragments all the time. We doodled for 10 minutes. We wrote stories in our school notebooks. We listened to music and imagined entire worlds. We didn't wait for perfect conditions. And I think many women need permission to return to that softer, less performative version of creativity again. So these are some of the ways that I have been reconnecting with creativity offline, even during busy seasons of life. One of the simplest things I've done is to create a small basket filled with creative things that I can reach for easily. Nothing fancy, just things like notebooks, pens, glue sticks, old magazines, stickers, coloured pencils, scraps of paper, all kinds of books. I think one reason that we stop creating is because everything starts to feel like a project. We think creativity requires lots of preparation and planning and energy we just don't have. But when creative tools are already nearby, it removes that resistance. Sometimes I'll sit down for just 10 minutes and journal. Sometimes I'll make a collage page. Sometimes I'll just copy down a quote that I want to remember. It doesn't have to become anything important. And strangely, I think that's what makes it healing. I started noticing how automatically I reach for my phone during every small gap in a day. Waiting for dinner to cook, sitting in the car, in between task switching. And I realised those tiny moments used to belong to my imagination. So now, sometimes instead of scrolling, I do something small and creative instead. I write down thoughts, or I journal, or I read a few pages of a physical book. Not because I'm trying to become wildly productive, but because I want to feel connected to myself again. I think many of us are just starving for moments that we are not reacting to other people's thoughts all day long. I forgot how inspiring physical things can feel. Old books, postcards, pressed flowers, magazine clippings, recipes handwritten on note cards. There's something about tangible inspiration that just slows me down in a good way. It reminds me of being younger, honestly. I think many millennial women grew up in a very tactile world before everything became digital. We had scrapbooks and diaries, library books, bedroom walls covered in cutouts and band posters. Inspiration felt personal back then. Now everything moves so quickly online that it can start to just feel disposable. So I've been intentionally rebuilding a slower, more physical relationship with inspiration again. And I've noticed that it makes me want to create more naturally. This one has made a huge difference. Sometimes I walk without listening to anything, even when that's just on my walking pad here in my office. No music, nothing, just silence. At first, it felt uncomfortable because I was so used to filling every moment with noise. But after a while, my thoughts started returning, ideas started appearing again. Memories, story ideas, reflections. I think creativity needs boredom in order to breathe. And most of us rarely experience true boredom anymore. We move from one piece of input to the next all day long. But when the mind quiets down, imagination has room to surface again. This has probably been the most emotional one for me. I started asking myself, what did I love before creativity became tied to achievement? Before it became content or productivity or something that I felt pressure to be good at? And for me, the answer was simple. It was things like reading for hours, writing stories, making cozy spaces, watching comforting films and TV, journaling, collecting little trinkets. I think many of us abandon the creative parts of ourselves because adulthood teaches us that creativity must be useful. But creativity was never meant to exist only for output. Sometimes it exists simply to make life feel richer. And honestly, reconnecting with the things that I loved when I was younger has really brought back parts of myself that I thought I'd lost. I think many midlife women believe that they need to completely reinvent themselves to feel alive again. But I'm starting to think that something different. Maybe we don't need louder lives. Maybe we need quieter ones. Maybe we don't need to become entirely new people. Maybe we simply need to reconnect with the part of ourselves that got buried underneath noise and pressure, responsibility, and overstimulation. Creating without screens hasn't made my life perfect, but it has made me feel more present, more grounded, more imaginative, more like myself again. And I think that matters. So if you've been feeling creatively numb lately, maybe don't ask yourself how to become more productive. Maybe ask yourself this instead. When was the last time that you gave your imagination some quiet space to return? If this video resonated with you, then I think that you are going to love my upcoming book, Cosy Creativity. Hit the subscribe button down below so that you don't miss out on the upcoming publication announcement. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.